And I don't have to get out.
And you don't have to go up. Anybody else need to sign the sheet to speak? Oh, sign in.
So,
Yeah.
where's the stuff? And one year
I was trying to get my. No, you're good.
$1,600. Last year, it was 39. Same building. That's dilapidated. Okay, so when I'm like, we're nine buildings. There are four now. No. They charge you on chicken houses. My brother here. But I said, homework, say you work with it. That's it.
Thank you.
It's done by square feet. Chicken houses are running linear feet. Cut that. You know, put it on the separate. How that makes sense. So I'm not sure. It says 20. They don't even have to hold something.
No, I'm not.
That's the large one to charge. You know, that much a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to take the spots.
No.
I got it.
Assessment.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight, for the Planning Commission meeting. We'll get started here. Oh. Good. Yeah.
Did I ask you if you would like to speak? Thank you guys so much. Did you say that here? We found Ethan. So that's trouble.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Washington County Planning Commission to order. Thank you all for coming. Hopefully we can have some good dialogue here tonight and get a lot of things accomplished. Looks like we've got a full slate of things to discuss. So, if you would stand and Marshall's going to lead us in the flag, and I'm going to lead prayer.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gracious Father, we just thank you for this day. Father, you've given us a beautiful day today. Praise you for that. Lord, I thank you for that. Gives us how we get to this day. Lord, I pray that you be in this meeting tonight. I pray that you would lead us and guide us. Help us to be wise in our actions, our deeds. Lord, I just thank you for your love, your mercy, your grace. Your Son came to give us hope of another day, better day. In Jesus' name, I pray. All right. All right. If you would, I know I'm going to have to check my phone here. Everybody check their phone, put them on silent if you would, please. If you do have to take a call, please feel free to step outside and take the call. We appreciate it. And like to, I guess, on the funny side, my wife one time I was talking about the kids, talking to the kids at the farm, the phone rang. Guy answered it. I didn't think nothing about it. Rang again. The third time I said, let's just stop and listen to this conversation. So if we could, like I said, I know everyone's busy, they've got a lot going on. If we can please have that, everyone would do that, I would greatly, I'm sure the planning commission members would greatly appreciate that as well. Either review and approval on signing of the planning commission's meeting minutes of April the 7th. I need everybody's got a copy of the minutes. If you had a chance to read the minutes, take a moment to look over. Right? Anybody have any comments? What else you need about this? We asked for money. I'll make a motion to approve it. Thank you, Andrew. Davis. Do I have a second? Second. You seconds it. All those in favor? I'm ready.
Aye.
All those in-
Oh, any of those?
I'm moderating for. All right, any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you all very much. Will we get this time?
Yes.
Absolutely. As of around, would it be mine?
And I'll mention that, Board of Appeals staff is joining us by telephone tonight.
It seems like there's a lull in the action, but every once in a while we get out here without getting stuff signed, so we just try to do it and take care of it as we go. So, for this moment. Thank you, everyone. All right, first up on the agenda tonight, table laws. Here. On the agenda this week. Moving on. The discussion of draft amended subdivision control ordinance. As it says, this is a draft. Way I'm understanding, there's concerns to what's in that draft, so, we are human, we do make mistakes as well. So,
Hey, Devin, would you if I can read off the discussion? Because I had some concerns and I even did a video on Facebook about it.
what about here?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you all so much for coming.
Go ahead, we have, what, 3 minutes? 3 minutes or 4 here, if you're gonna talk. Isn't that what was set up for us to have?
No, it was a reasonable amount of time to speak, and I think reasonable amount of time is probably open for discussion. But for the public, what happened is that if you go and look on the webpage, you can see that you now have to sign a minimum of 24 hours in advance to speak at this meeting. We had quite a lively discussion about how much time citizens should be allowed to speak, and we ended up settling on 4 minutes. So if you want to sign up for next month, please do as soon as possible.
I would like to go ahead and put a motion on the floor that we table subdivision control ordinance until next month and cancel the public hearing next month.
Positive that.
I'll go motion on the floor by Andrew. Does it cancel or vote on? Vote on. Table it. Until next month.
Until further discussion, we have further you know what I'm saying?
Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
That would go hand in hand. So just for the benefit of the folks in the gallery, figuring out, they understand what's happening. We were set to discuss how the subdivision ordinance grew and doubled in size and added a whole bunch of things. And that's what we've all kind of talked about on Facebook and what we're all kind of, a little bit sore about. Well, I noticed that the May 6th edition of the Washington County Herald put out a notice that said that there would be a public hearing on the draft amendment, the draft amendment we're supposed to discuss tonight. And so the public hearing would mean that next month, the public hearing, if it passes, would then go to the commissioners, and if the commissioners say yes, then it would become actual law. And all of the changes in here that everybody's angry about would actually go through. So what Andrew just did is he made a motion to say, hey, we want to table this and not talk about this evening. We all want some time to review it more. And that would also cancel the June 2nd public hearing on this. So that would give us all the citizens and as board members, planning commission members, the chance to discuss this and find out what you really want. I'm personally concerned that it doubled in size from last month to this month. And I think we all have the right to get some input into it because it affects our property and what we're allowed to do with it. So, go on, sorry.
Thank you. All right.
Can I interrupt this?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Or,
We table it when I'm supposed to openly talk about this. Because I want to talk about it. And with my job in my office, I don't have time to keep putting this off. Because property owners have surveys done, and they need this approved sometime, and if we table it until next month, I'm putting more people off. And that makes me angry. I want to talk about what we see that we didn't exactly indicate that we wanted, but that we approved without knowing what we were doing. We didn't ask enough questions and move forward. And we don't have to have a public hearing next month, but at least talk about it tonight so we can fix what's.
That's a fair point. I would make a motion to amend the motion that we discuss it tonight, but we take away the pressure of having a public hearing on June 2nd and cancel the hearing. But for all the folks who took the time tonight, you know what? I think you all deserve to be able to hear what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So, I'm gonna make a motion. No, not yet. Put it back on. No, so, did the motion pass, Kevin?
I believe it there.
You haven't called for. Okay,
There wasn't, but okay, I thought.
yeah, just trying to help.
So Andrew made a motion, Lucy seconded, and she's asked to
Yeah, that's
take
true.
that back.
That's true.
And still have Andrew's voting on the table.
So Andrew's motion is get rid of the discussion tonight and take away the June 2nd. If I'm allowed to withdraw my second on that, I would like to, because then I'm going to make a motion.
I think the best thing would be for us to vote on the motion that was made and seconded, because some people did vote yes, some people are going to vote no. And then if we choose as a board that we don't want to do that, we need to rescind the decision on that motion and then make a new one that we want to cancel that public hearing, but we want to continue with the agenda as it's posted.
Well said.
I'm sorry.
I'm not a part of it, just public.
Parliamentary.
I did
Honestly, guys, this is the craziest stuff that you have to do in these meetings. You can't just talk right.
and I believe a rescind is a two-minute.
If you guys need to count, I'm just gonna answer you.
I'll get out.
So we've got a motion on the floor. We need to vote on that, on the motion. Andrew said, but we found,
There is no second to the motion.
well, there's another second. Somebody else, no, we can't do it. Yeah, motion, if the motion is not seconded, then it dies. So then there was a second, Andrew's motion.
Okay, has he retracted his motion? Is now he's reissuing the motion, or are we going to vote on the motion, let it be done, and then we'll make another motion?
Goodness sake.
That's not how I felt. We voted.
Yeah, I thought we
We
voted.
voted. And it passed. But you didn't ask for those who were opposed. So I feel like there was a vote. You need to ask for opposition so we can choose not to, and then it passed. I believe that's the way that I would do that. If we had stopped before the vote, I believe we would be trying to do what it is. Yes, you have raised your hand, we voted on past the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reset.
Did you hear all that? Please. Okay, all right, so there is currently a motion on the table. A second to the motion, so now let's have a vote with everyone saying whether they want to, vote in favor of the motion that Andrew made, or if they oppose it. So, planning commission members,
And Andrews is a two-part motion.
sure. The motion is to move and table everything until the next meeting. You're saying you would like it, and some others are wanting it for discussion. Absolutely clear forever.
Right. The main thing that I'm trying to accomplish, and I think Andrew's trying to accomplish also, is to cancel the public hearing. Because this is all that has come by surprise. It's doubled. The size of the same has gone from 17 to 35 pages.
All right.
So there's a motion on the table, and it was seconded. Motion was made by Andrew to not have any discussion on the draft amended subdivision control ordinance. Lucy seconded that motion, and also to cancel the meeting set for June 2nd. So now we need to vote on whether or not who's in favor of that motion, and then we'll ask for opposition. So you want to,
All those in favor? Andrew's motion. So to cancel, to postpone the discussion on subdivision control ordinance and cancel the public hearing. It's for the discussion.
right. Planning commission members need to know whether they're in favor of that. So all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. So we've got, Kevin, Andrew, and Lori voting in favor of this motion that's on the table. All those opposed? Okay, so I'm going to take your notes. Okay, so we got Emily, Todd, Marcia, Kelly, Lucy, and Danielle opposing. So the motion does not.
We are discussing.
Well, we've still got the next thing on the floor, point of order. I would like to make a motion that we cancel the June 2nd public hearing so that we don't have the pressure on ourselves to try and get through something that's double in size. But Emily has got a great point, which is, people are here, they need to hear what we're talking about, and we don't need to unnecessarily delay it. Because your work is terrible.
And also, I think the board is, could we discuss and then decide at the end of the meeting whether we can put the
I'd like to put the motion on the floor now, because it's just going to be impossible to get through 18 more pages. I mean, we literally do the work that we can do in the 1 hour and a half that we have.
And we can hold a special, like, even if we have our June monthly meeting, and then we decide,
Yeah, the junior you can make
we
it
can
you
do a
want.
public hearing the next week, or,
No, we have to have a notice in the paper. A certain number of days before, so it wouldn't be a week, it'd be longer than that.
I guess I'm saying, like, if we decided in 2 weeks from now that, let's do a public hearing 2 weeks after our monthly meeting. In other words, our monthly, the hearing doesn't have to be a monthly meeting.
Correct.
Or not our monthly meeting. We can move up.
Certainly.
Marcia, could you talk into the microphone? We can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I know Becky was struggling too. She asked me specifically, or Rebecca, I'm sorry. She asked me specifically to talk in the mic.
So I'll second Lucy's motion so we can have a discussion on the motion. I don't feel I agree that it would be good if we could, wait till the end of the meeting to make a decision. However, I agree with Lucy, and then, I would like to see whatever amendments we make tonight again to review at next month's meeting before we open this to a public hearing. I think we're just setting ourselves up for the issues that we are potentially, going to have. So at this point, I would not be in favor of having a public hearing.
So that's,
I will second and second. Need to have a second.
Any discussion on that? All those. I agree with this motion. Opposed?
Lori, did you vote? I'm not, no, because I'm not sure what this motion is. Okay, so Lucy made a motion to cancel the public hearing that's set for June 2nd. Danielle seconded that motion. So, we asked for a show of hands, voice vote, who is in favor of that motion that's on the table to cancel the June 2nd meeting at this time. I guess I would like to is, yes, I would recommend that because we have a discussion on all of this. I don't think it would be appropriate to go ahead and set up. I mean, honestly, if this is going to turn into some discussion, it's taken us more than 1 week to discuss. Yeah, and Kelly asked the question whether or not it made sense to have a discussion to see if it's necessary to cancel the hearing or not. But we have this motion on the table that we do need to vote on. Just want to make sure you caught all of the discussion about that. Well, if we're going to have a session today, I think we need to defer this till the end of the meeting. Okay. I think that we need more kind of discussion because this stuff is new. I wasn't aware of any of this sudden change. I'd like to hear some first. Okay, so, but we do have a motion on the table, so we do need to take a vote. We started taking the votes. So
Everybody voted yes, and then.
yes, I make a motion to cancel the June 2nd. Okay. Okay, so that is unanimous. So the meeting will, the public hearing on June 2nd will be canceled, but we will hold the meeting on June 2nd. Okay. And maybe we'll have great attendance at that meeting too.
Yes, please come back. Y'all are going to hear a lot of things tonight. Some of the things you're probably going to agree with and some of the things you weren't. So this meeting is being live streamed and it's also on Washington County, Indiana. That's the name of the channel on YouTube. So you can go back and rewatch this whole thing and skip past the boring parts. So that next, when you come back, what you want to do, if there's things that you're concerned about, is there's that form that you have to fill out at least 24 hours in advance. It's pretty simple. And then you'll get 4 minutes to speak. So you can like have a whole script and write it out. And we want you to. We really want your feedback.
All right. Floor is open for the discussion. The draft amended subdivision control ordinance.
I'm sorry.
I'll just say for the benefit of the audience, how this came to be. We did have the subdivision control ordinance passed a while back last year, and it was decided after hearing concerns that from surveyors to Emily's office that we really needed some other information in the subdivision ordinance. So we started talking about that, and we also determined through public comment that there was good technical information in chapter of our code of ordinances that is posted on the website, on the planning commission website, that we needed to carry over. So we decided that we did need to carry over a lot of that language. We wanted to leave some of that language in chapter 153, and we needed to modify some of the language that was being carried over. And there were also some additional considerations that came up in the course of the discussion. So the document that we have online is the current draft based on those work efforts and the discussion that's occurred here on this, in this body, from this body, and that's what we have. So if, I want to make sure everybody knows what the code of ordinances is. I'm going to ask Travis to interject as he sees fit, because he really probably knows more about this than most anyone here. This is just a printout of the code of ordinances, and that's also available on the county website. And there's one particular chapter in this book that we looked at, and it's called chapter 153, planning and development. And it has 9 sections in it. And most of them deal with subdivision plat approvals, but there were 2 other parts in here that weren't really related to that. So one of them was regional development, which is sort of a miscellaneous topic that they fit in here because it didn't neatly fit in other sections of the code of ordinances. And it talks about River Hills Economic Development District and the Regional Planning Commission. The other miscellaneous provision was a kind of a hanging chad. I mean, they just an odd couple of paragraphs that actually were rolled up into chapter 154, and we found that it was it should have just been deleted a while back. We're taking care of it now and doing some house cleaning, eliminating 153.35 that deals with setback distances from confined feeding operations and confined animal feeding operations. So that would leave, when we pull out the information about the subdivisions and bring it over into our draft amended ordinance, that just leaves the River Hills Economic Development District. So what that means is we got this amended subdivision control ordinance, and we also have to amend chapter 153 of the code of ordinances to just keep in that River Hills section. That's also on the agenda tonight as a point of discussion after we get through the subdivision. It's pretty simple. None of the language has been changed. It just leaves this by itself in chapter 153.25. So I just wanted to explain how we've got 2 documents and why we have 2 documents. A small document that's just 3 pages, and a larger document that covers our subdivision control ordinance, which is, currently the draft version is about 35 pages long. So that's, in a nutshell, a little bit about it.
I think that's a pretty great explanation. I think one of the things that was the biggest misconception for me coming into this whole situation is that a subdivision is not necessarily a subdivision like a neighborhood. A subdivision can be just when you subdivide off a couple of acres for a child or for a grandchild. So even if you're subdividing, we call it a subdivision chapter, but it's really a subdividing chapter. So one of the things that we've done in the past that I thought was great is we took the minimum parcel size from 2 acres down to 1 acre. So that will allow a lot of people to have smaller parcels to still divide them up among family. But I want you to think of it as subdividing, not subdivision, because it's not just about, big companies coming in and making a neighborhood. It's also just about us taking off an acre for our kids.
Thank you, Lucy. I do have 3 extra copies up here, and I'd be happy to pass them out in the audience if somebody wants to look at this as we're talking about it. So I see a hand raised up in the back. Pass this down. Ask Travis to see if somebody is copy of that. And it's a draft. It's a working draft.
Yeah, this is not final. This is why we want you here, and I really, really appreciate coming in.
Now, at our last meeting we had in April, At our last meeting in April, one of the things we did, we spent quite a bit of time on this subdivision control ordinance. And we went through chapter 153, 0.01 through 0.07, and talked at length about what language gets brought over into our new subdivision ordinance, what language should just be deleted, and what language needed to be modified. And then we had to make sure it was accurate, make sure it reflects major concerns that the Plan Commission has become aware of and problems that have occurred. And, Emily can certainly speak to that.
He's good.
Oh, that's great. So, we had a lengthy discussion about that, and all those changes were captured in the meeting minutes, the Plan Commission meeting minutes, that just got approved tonight, reviewed and approved tonight. And if there's each item is bulleted, it's about a page and a half of information referring to the sections in here that were modified based on the discussion in the last Plan Commission meeting. So a lot of thought went into it. There was a lot of discussion on different points, and we came up with the best language we thought we could based on the information we had at this time.
Anyway, you're on board.
I'm on the third. Sorry. It wasn't working. A lady had asked me from the audience to kindly ask everyone, as we're talking, to pull our mics down when we're talking, because the public's having a hard time hearing. What? Pull it when you are. Okay. I'm going to start by saying, I agree during the meeting last month, that chapter 153 in its verbiage was important, and we needed to add it to the subdivision control ordinance. From working with dividing properties in the past in the county, I was under the impression that chapter 153 only applied to what we're now calling the major subdivision. So when we were going through that was very good knowledge. We needed to keep it. I didn't ask for clarity where it was going to be added. I was under the assumption myself, because me and Travis have worked with dividing properties in the county, that this is only going to make it chapter or major subdivisions. So my apologies that I didn't ask that at the last meeting for clarity. I just assumed. I think that it is good language and that we do need it. But I don't think that it needs to apply to every division of property, which we have administrative, which is less than 5, minor, which is 5 to 8, and then major, which is what we all know is like the subdivisions that hit our county. That's the big parcels with little bitty, like the roads that come in your neighborhood. So I just wanted to say that's what, and that's on my hair. I thought that's what we were doing. Should have asked. So when I did get this document and I sat down and read this meeting, I was like, oh, well, I didn't know that's what I was doing. So I just wanted to my.
Can you explain the difference of how you're thinking it should be versus what it actually?
So I thought, let's just, you guys don't know what all we added from chapter 153, because not everybody has a copy. But the parts that we discussed during our meeting, after the public hearing was closed, and I opened up for the discussion. Like, I believe I think in what we're reading now, it says general administrative requirements for all subdivision types. I think that starts chapter 153. Okay. I don't want to take up everybody's time, but this is what I think that the 1 acre, that's what we already approved. This alternate language, I'm going to skip it for a second, because that's not what. I think that B, that you need to have 2 copies. That's just the logical thing for the county. If somebody will bring in a plaque, 2 copies, one gets recorded and stays here, one gets a stamp, they take it home with them, put in their office and give it to their customers if that's what they want to do. Just 2 copies. I think that applies to everywhere. That's letter B. I think that C through 1 or through I is probably just major subdivision. That's what I think.
I apologize for interrupting. What page are you on? And are you on those 35 pages or are you wrapping?
35 pages,
Okay, what page are you on?
page 6.
Page 6, okay.
I think that J, which is on page 7, probably applies to everyone, because if it falls in this jurisdiction that's described here, that's out of our control. That's no longer a county planning commission area, that's a Salem planning commission area, so that applies for all splits. We call them splits in my office, I'm sorry if I use American split. That applies for all splits. If it's in an incorporated area, if it's Salem to Moss Range, that's not county policy, that's it. And then I think that for the permits required, obviously, if you're gonna build on your property, you need permits, but I don't think that applies, I think, in a different area. I think should be major. This, I think, is for developers maybe. I'm 100% positive this stuff needs to be followed when you're building, but I think that B on page 6, and I think J on page 7 would apply to all of the categories. I think the others, in my opinion, applies to the majors. My opinion. That's just the start.
That was a great summary. That's kind of how I read it as well. If you go back to page 3 or page 6, so it's page 5. Under page 5, number 3, it says general administrative requirements for all subdivision types. And this is where it really started to get to where I disagree with it, because there's a vast difference between like giving the kid or the grandkid an acre versus somebody building, 9 or more homes and making a new neighborhood. And so a lot of the language that would apply, and you think, yeah, it would make sense if you've got somebody coming in to put 9 or 50 houses, and you want to make sure that the roads are graded, that they're not too steep, that there's adequate water supply. We put into it last month that if there is a private well that's servicing it, that everybody gets deeded to that private well, so you don't have one person with a well that's deeded and 8 people that are just out of luck. So if we go to page 6, under letter F on page 6, it says, the submitted plat, it's recommended that no road grade exceed 15%, and no grade may exceed a maximum of 3%. There's a little bit more words in there. But basically, that shouldn't apply if you're doing, your 10 acre. Or even if, you're splitting it up to 5 per family. And then there were some other things that had changed in here where, again, this is under where it starts on page 5 and it says that everybody has to do this. And I don't think everybody should have to do this. And I'm on page 9. 9 letter G says, the proposed subdivision should have all drainage ditches, streams, creeks, rivers, sinkhole caves, springs, close. Now this, by the way, this is what affects the surveyor. Wait a second. Dan, Bland? I can't. Do you mind, coming down and explaining why this is bad for the administrator? Because what happens, if I'm reading this correctly, and I'm not a surveyor, which is why I need your expertise. When we changed the subdivision ordinance before, the thing that I vehemently opposed was forcing people that are just, taking an acre or two to have a meets and bounds survey, which can cost thousands of dollars. Instead of just drawing on a piece of paper and reporting it, I didn't want y'all to have to do thousands of dollars. But this requirement here goes on further to say that when the surveyor does this, they require some more 10-foot elevations. And you can imagine if you have to take a piece of property and make all the contour lines you have on the topographical map, that is, what's it going to be double, depending upon the size of it. Yeah, if you don't mind, because I don't even know the vocabulary for the surveyors.
I don't think that said the topographic map, those are USGS maps. Those are out there, so nobody's gonna have to buy to have a survey for the topographic on that, I wouldn't think.
Well, you think that until you get to page 34.
Okay. All right, Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, so
Do what?
Okay.
So I'll just try to answer Lucy's questions, because that's what I was called down here to do.
Yeah.
To the table. I'll speak at the end of the conversation about the surveyor's point of view of this document, because it was said of what the surveyors think. That's how that was quoted is not how the surveyors think of the comments. So I'll give that opinion here at the end when my speak. So I'll just answer your question, and if you have any more questions, I'll answer them here. But to answer your question, yes, Lucy, that will add a tremendous amount of added expense. The things that are added into the administrative and the minor subdivision, there's been a lot of things added to this document that should be in a major subdivision only. Okay, so briefly here, I was a part of coming to every meeting over the course of a year to try to get a subdivision control ordinance passed. We had an old subdivision control ordinance for many, many years in this county. It needed to be revised. There were some things that need to be discussed, some things that need to be brought up to date. And the board passed a 13-page, I believe it was 13-page, very simple, very unrestrictive, very common sense subdivision control ordinance last year. And I was pretty proud of that. I've done a lot of surveys and a lot of splits for a lot of people here in this county. I've been surveying here in Washington County for 23 years. And what I heard from my customers across Washington County of the new subdivision control ordinance was that it was simplistic, it was fair, it was common sense. And yes, after it was passed, there was some things that came up. We needed to tweak a couple words here. A definition maybe needed change. There was some verbiage about access easements and minor subs. And yes, chapter 153 needed to carry over major subdivisions. All three of those things are true. That's not what this document is. This document is a 35-page change. It is taking the subdivision control ordinance, the simplistic 13-page ordinance that was passed a year ago, and completely changed. This document would take major subdivision ordinances and apply them to the simplistic, everyday split of an acre to family, friend, child, or whatever, or a couple lots. And I do not think that was the intent of this subdivision control ordinance when it was passed a year ago. I don't think that was anyone's intent on this rule. And I think that if we want to clarify where 80% of the problems of this new document stem from, it's carrying over those items into the administrative and minor subdivision process. But yes, to get back, not straight away, those items would cause a tremendous amount of cost to the citizens of Washington County. Not only is it a cost, but it's just things that are not necessary. It would take surveyors a lot more time to schedule. So, if someone needs an acre split, it's something that I can get to in a couple of weeks. Now, if I have to adhere to all these new changes, it might take months. So then the people of Washington County are now waiting months to go through this process and paying maybe double the fees to get this done. So, yeah, to answer your question, it's a burden on the people.
So I have a follow-up question. When you do what we would call an administrative subdividing, and you just take off a couple of acres for a family member, is that a pretty simple survey? Like it's a piece of paper, you've got lines that show what your property lines are, and that's about it?
Yeah, and it's in the people that we've done for over the last calendar year since we had this new subdivision control ordinance have been very happy. It is a very fast, streamlined process. And we go out, we conduct a survey, we find what we need to, we split the property out, we put the plat together, we write the legal description. And currently, it's a very fast process. It goes to Emily's office, she reviews the plat, it conforms to the ordinance. Yes, it meets the standards, and almost immediately it's approved. It takes her about 5 minutes to look at these plats. So the process is, we bring the survey in, she looks it over, takes her about 5 minutes to say, yes, it conforms, and we record it, and they're off to the title company sometimes the very next day.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's a fast process, and this would allow that significantly.
I'm curious if this is something you would ever do for somebody on this thing, like the 10-foot elevation. Like I probably wouldn't want that. Maybe I can look at my acre or two and know what my elevation is. But this is the thing that caught my eye. You would have to put down drainage ditches, streams, creeks, rivers, sinkholes, caves, springs, closed depressions, and related features, and show those on that plat that you make. Would you normally write all that down for anybody?
Only for a major subdivision.
Yeah.
Only for a major.
It just seems like it's
Excuse me, seems like somebody's missing something.
Yeah, I think
Obviously, this is, 153 is for major subdivisions, not for administrative or minor.
But Tom, that's not how it's written.
Can I ask a good question?
Right, that, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And Emily, I think, said that as well, that was not the intention. Yes. I don't think that was any of our intentions. So you did mention that 153 does need to be included. My understanding, these are two documents that existed, correct?
I have a question about that specifically, because I know that I've missed the past two planning commission meetings. I've watched them online, and what I've heard and what this document came to me is not what I interpreted from those meetings. But under my understanding, I knew that section 153 existed as a planning commission member for 13 years. And it was my understanding, based upon the second sentence on page number 4, where it says any prior ordinances pertaining to subdivision control with amendments thereto are hereby amended and repealed. And so my understanding, after we voted on that first subdivision control ordinance last year, just a few months ago, that 153 was null and void. And that we should have been looking at 153 and picking out the things that we wanted. And I believe that's why Max kept coming up here and saying, this is why we need this one little part out of that. Am I correct, Max? The part about the contour lines and things like that for the major subdivision. So I guess I don't understand why all of a sudden now we're trying to combine two documents when they're not. Maybe that might not even be a document that is.
So there are parts of 153 that should be in both the minor and major.
No.
No part should be.
Not that I can see.
Okay.
Those should be all consideration for the major subdivision.
Okay, so you do not believe that any parts of 153 belong in the minor
Or administrative.
or
Yeah, that's a really good explanation. And I don't want to jump ahead too far, but the filing fees, not new.
Yeah, so typically, if the filing fees, what I saw here is significantly higher than anything else we see.
We've got $250 here on page number 10. Filing fees is number 5, and then A says that you've got $250 for any administrative subdivision. So you want to give your kid a neighbor, it's going to cost you $250 just to apply before any of the other fees start. And then if you go minor subdivision, which is 5 to 8, so you got a really big property, that's $350. And then it's $550 for a major subdivision, plus an additional $20 per parcel. Now, I don't have any sympathy for a $550 fee on somebody that's doing 9 or 10 or 50 or 100. But for me, given my kid maker, $250 is a lot.
The only thing I can speak on that from a surveyor standpoint is that I want the entire public to know is this. When you set a fee for a platting fee, that's not something that the surveyor just kindly takes out of our back pocket and pays. All of these fees will be passed down to the consumer, to the clients, to the people watching the county. So, every time you add a fee, every time you tap on something that has to be paid, that's all things that we have to charge. So,
Yeah, and I don't think that government should be in the business of making a profit off of its citizens. So I'm always really concerned when I see a profit markup. You know, I sell plants, I might buy them for $5 and sell them for 15, right? Government shouldn't be doing that. And in letter D, 5G on page 10, it says the developer shall pay an additional fee of $75 for the cost associated with the notice of public hearing. So this notice of public hearing, which we just got rid of that June 2nd, but this was the notice that was published. I called the paper today and asked them, hey, I want to do this. How much does this cost? $15.58. So the previous to the document that we're looking at right now, it was $25. Well, you know, you probably got somebody 30 an hour over time. You know, you pay them $15 an hour. But $75 to write it down and send it over to the paper just seems to me to be atrocious.
So, you know, after the subdivision ordinance was passed last year, the small edits that was asked by surveyors, this was brought up. Surveyors asked for a simple definition change, a very simple wording change. We had talked about under administrative plats for access, deeded access. We asked for that to be changed to the word "be simple." Okay, that's a 2 to 3 word change. The second thing that surveyors wanted to see was there was some miscommunication in the minor subdivision process as to when a minor subdivision would be a minor subdivision based on whether it had an access easement or not. We wanted that to be clarified a little bit better, and so did Emily. She was running into some troubles that was causing her some problems. And so we asked for that to be clarified a little better. That should have been a 2 or 3 sentence. The next thing was, and you know, as Max said in the past, and some of the items of 153 should have been in the major subdivision listing. Those are the only 3 changes that any surveyor that I know, that I have talked to, including myself, has ever asked for. No surveyor that I know, including myself, has ever wanted what this has turned into. And so I just want to make that clear from the surveyor standpoint and from Emily's standpoint. I'm not trying to speak for her, but those were the corrections that she asked for and she thought that she was getting and that we have asked for. Not to have the subdivision control ordinance completely burnt to the ground and started over with to this degree.
That's a great point. I was so proud of us for coming up with 13 pages because the biggest problem with government is that they want to, there's just an encroachment on our liberties. And the more words there are in this paper, the more it restricts us. I'm in favor of putting a leash on government, not a leash on citizens. And if you all like to Google Fountain County, Indiana, I know one of the people on the planning commission there, this is their subdivision control ordinance. 1, 2, 3. So I think that Washington County might have been the second smallest. I know Todd bragged about it, and I agree with him. 13 pages is pretty small. 3 pages is even smaller. I don't know if we can get to this, but.
So, yeah, Todd was right. When we passed that subdivision control ordinance of 13 pages, was one of the smallest in the state. It was one of the least restrictive. I talked to surveyors who do not do a lot of work in Washington County, but they do some work in Washington County. And after they've seen the subdivision control that you guys passed last year, they're like, man, we should get our. Was it perfect? No. Was it close? It was. And so I think that's the disappointing side of this is we do see subdivision control ordinances throughout the state of Indiana that are hundreds of pages. Okay. When you get into large municipalities, they get extremely complicated. And I just want the general public to know that we did not have that. We did not have a highly restrictive subdivision control ordinance in this county. It was minimal to protect the public. The only things that were in there were general things to protect the general public. Okay. It wasn't overly restricted, it was common sense.
Yep, good on us.
And surveyors, and I believe the board wants to see the common sense remaining for these small entities.
There was
Can
some,
we go back to, can we, again, just for a minute, can we go back to the 13-page document was started last year. I was not on the board at that time, so I'm catching up just slightly. From that document, our report requires and needs us to make some updates.
Yes.
To that.
Yes.
So what we were working through last month were some of those updates. And then what I believe I understand at this moment is that section 153, we thought needed to be combined in certain levels. But it really does not to fix your needs. Can you just describe to us what your needs are that we need to pass that 13-page document?
Under administrative, when it talks about the driveway, to be administrative, you own your entrance from the road into your house, whatever that may be. The way it was worded before was, the intent was to own it, that made it administrative. if you had an easement in, I could not approve it to be a residential building tract. Because that was not what we wanted. So it contradicted each other. So the intent was that you owned it, be simple, which I learned later. I didn't know that at the time. That's what it needed to be. That was change one. Change two was, if we're creating an administrative plat, technically, by the number of splits, 5, creation of parcels, 5 or less, if you needed an access easement, I couldn't approve you to be a residential building tract because under administrative, you had to own your driveway to the road, not have an easement through somebody else to get there. But to be a minor, the way ours was worded, you had to create 5 to 8 parcels, not the 1 to 5. So I just needed or wanted for clarity for my office and for the surveyors and the property owners. Then we were creating up to 5 and you needed an easement, you could, and it would automatically put you in a minor subdivision, which would be logical. You would just have to follow the rules of the minor subdivision, because basically says you need a maintenance agreement.
Right, so if a maintenance agreement is required,
And
and on a shared driveway, however, a maintenance agreement is required in the case that those properties are sold.
under a minor subdivision, yes. So if you couldn't get a drive and you needed one, and then the number of parcels for an admin, you would automatically flow to be able to have a residential building tract, but you had to follow the criteria. That's just a
And I feel like I was present for us to discuss those things and we were able to incorporate those things. So where the issue is now is combining the 153 and applying it to places it should not have been applied. Correct.
that's not.
Okay. So we need to remove that,
How we get back to where
right, get back to 153 not being a part of what you needed, these changes. To be able to.
Wouldn't we just check the 35 pages and go back to what we had before? And then only do the precision surgical things that really matter?
Well, I have a question about what prompted the 153 being included. Was there a reason and we just overextended it? Was there any other fact that
I cannot.
I don't recall the reason. So,
Somebody said something earlier about permits, and I wanted to encourage everybody in the public to look up the Indiana log cabin rule, because, permitting is another thing that puts monetary obstacles. And my reading of the Indiana log cabin rule, and certainly Marcia and Lisa are attorneys, so they can pop in if they want. My reading of the Indiana log cabin rule says that you can build your own property in an agricultural area. So this doesn't work if you're in, Indianapolis or in Salem. But if you're zoned agricultural, you can build your own home with 0 permits. The only thing that they're going to want you to have inspections and permits on is the septic, which makes sense because it's a public health hazard. So I would just like to encourage y'all, to look at that.
okay, the other thing that was addressed was the fees.
Yes.
I think that's a good thing to discuss, whether we are in line with other counties, whether we are covering the labor needed, for lack of a better term, for the process for those things. So, do we have any idea where that should land? Where the fee should?
Great question.
I don't know where these numbers came from. 250, 355, 75. I don't know where this came from.
Yeah, I don't know either. But previously, just so you all know, it was $75 to file it, and it was $25 to put it in the newspaper. So now it has jumped from 75 to 250, 350, 550.
Okay, so originally it was 75.
Administrative plats were 0.
Oh, okay. Okay. So minor and major were 75 cents.
I have no idea.
Do you
Where
want
was-
to see what the 75, what that gets you? $75.
It's a non-refundable filing fee.
Okay. And then where,
Fees come from 153 and 3.
which was, it was 153. That we
Yeah, and there is language in 153, that makes people giving it to their family members exempt. And that was, yeah,
the meeting, it just says that we agree that the following fees shall be updated with fees reflective of current costs of more line with what neighboring counties are charging by subdivision.
hey, David, you filed those. Do you know what any other counties charge?
Well, for administrative, let's say in Jackson County, it's $50. Administrative in Washington County is currently free.
Yeah.
Zero.
I'd like to
I
keep
think
that.
that's a ton.
Do you know what they charge for minors or majors?
Minor subdivisions, I believe, in Jackson County are $75, which is still in line. And I think majors may be a bit high. That's kosher for a major subdivision.
Yeah, at 153.03, which you guys can get from the Washington County website, the Washington County Government, and then Plan Commission. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there that's kind of confusing, but then there's actually links to every single thing that we're talking about. So it actually says page 48 in the top left corner, because this is a really huge document, 153.03 filing fees. The following subdivisions of land are exempt from the provisions of this subchapter, and those exemptions include a division of land for the sale or exchange of tracts between neighbors who are next to each other, so you can move those property lines a bit, and then a division of land by a person for any purpose, for a child, grandchild, sibling, parent, and then it goes on to a whole bunch of family members. So all of that should just be exempt. We don't want, real individual people jacked up with a whole bunch of fees.
Anybody else? So, what do we want to do? Back to the original 13-page document, stand along the way we intended to do, or to do, or we leave it.
I make a motion that we vacate this 35-page draft that was proposed, recognize the good work and intent that was put into it, and then go back to the 13 and then just very, very much concentrate on the things that need to be said. So maybe next month we can decide what are those very small things that need to be said and then have a public hearing.
I agree, I think that we need to go, 13 document, ensuring that it meets the three things, for the 2 to 3 things you asked for. I also think that we should look at the fee. I do believe they should be minimal, but I don't necessarily think that they need to be limited. So we've got a motion on the table, and you have expanded that. Just second, Lucy's motion.
Motion on the floor to go back to the 13th page, have a second.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is that loud?
Well, I mean, not technically, it's up to the pleasure of the president. What do you think?
Sure.
I'm just curious, because
Can you come
we don't know more now than what we did when we walked in here. But somehow from last month until now, we have 13.
Can you come to the microphone?
Thank you. Yeah. We appreciate it. We're live streaming, and so we all try to talk to the microphone so everybody from home can hear.
Yeah.
Come on.
We're an hour, 15 minutes deep, and none of us still know anything. But last month we had a 13-page document. This month we have a 35-page document.
It's
There's
okay.
a you sitting up there. Somebody created 35 pages from last month to this month.
Last month, I think it was about 18 things. And
Okay, we'll back up 2 months.
so I have to incorporate changes, and perhaps got more in there than what this board wants, so this, the board doesn't have voting rights to vote on changes.
I'd like to come to Lisa's defense on that, because if you look, if you were to go to last month's meeting, you'll see we made a lot of changes. We were doing this, we were doing that. Lisa does a super good job with the notes. So if you ever look at the meeting minutes, she does a great job of saying everything that happened.
Oh, hang on now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that she doesn't.
Okay.
But you are also the one that posted everything online today and said for everybody to show up here. And this is your job.
Yes.
This is your commission. So do you guys ever meet when it's just not public?
No. Everything we do is in front of the public, which is why it was so important for you to get here. Because without your support, people might have been okay with $250.
I think if you ask any of these people out here, none of them gonna tell you they know anything more now than when they walked in here. Am I right? There's no way that has a clue what you're talking about.
35 to 13, that's all I.
You know, we went from 13 to 35, now we're gonna go from 35 back to 13. We still don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Okay, I think they need to break it down. So last year,
Maybe you can speak into the mic so we can hear you better.
And I'm not trying to be rude or, I'm just saying.
no, that's okay. Last year, we passed the 13-stage subdividing control ordinance.
We recommended it to the commissioners for approval.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, it got passed. And then it was brought to our attention that a couple of things needed to be added. One, this section 153 that we're talking about, it already existed. It was already in enforcement, but it needed to be added to the 13 pages that we created. But what the mistake was that section 153 got added to the whole thing, and section 153 only needed to be added to the major subdivision.
So,
And that's
if we started in about the first 15 minutes and said, hey, make a motion to take 35 pages out?
No.
Wouldn't it have been a lot easier?
It would not.
It wouldn't have been?
I don't think it's that simple because
Oh,
we do need, well, we do need section 150.
And Daniel Wayne probably one of the smartest guys that got in here, so if he said that, he said, I don't know how you can add a few sentences like she wanted to, and you had 35 pages.
Because they agreed that section 153, which already existed, just needed to be added for the major subdivision, not the whole thing.
And I'll specify that in my last month's meeting. That was our mistake.
It's not.
A draft ended up having a mistake in it. And then I think everyone was here thinking that we were gonna vote on that.
So Lucy, you think maybe we could have went with the video today and said, hey, there was a mistake made, and we're gonna try to correct it tonight?
No.
Versus getting everybody in an uproar?
Well, first of all, I think it's absolutely incredibly valuable for people to understand what their government is doing. And let me share with you why I thought it was so important. I put the call in. I put out that man and you all shut up.
No, but listen, they still don't know what we're talking about. Does anybody know what we're talking about, right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Reed. I'm just saying, I'm with but
Let's talk about the history of this plan commission, what's happened. Does everybody remember going to Tony Carville's office?
I think
In January last year?
I think we need to.
I'm just saying.
We're getting a little bit out of hand here.
Okay.
Let's bring it back. Actually, you say what you're gonna say then, and then I'm shutting this.
That's fine, okay. To start with, the reason that they're having the subdivision control ordinance is that exercise planning is only in the state of Indiana, you have to follow this book. And in this book, it says, section 36-7-4-702, in order for your, says a subdivision control ordinance must specify standard specifications. Number one, minimum width, depth, and lot area. Number two, public glade, width, grade, curve, and coordination of subdivision public ways with critical and planning public ways. And section 3, the extensions of water, sewer, and other municipal services. This is required to be in this document. What we had before was an 11-page document that we created in 2011. This was the original document. It needed updated maybe, but what we ended up doing was changing to this one, which did not include none of the public ways, the 13, 15 degree grade and all that other good stuff that was in this original document. It covered all that. The original document also covered the water part. It said you have to have a 3-inch water main coming to a subdivision unless you get a written approval from other areas. It also added in this document that if you're sharing the driveway from minor subdivision, if you're not going to bring it up to code as far as the road surface, you have to have a homeowner's agreement, a written agreement to handle that. That would allow you to get an agreement before you sell off one of the pieces of property in your shared easement. So you have to do that before you can sell it off to take care of alleviate a lot of the aggravation and trouble going on.
what we've had last year didn't have the other sections that's required by law. This 15, the 153 is what added on. That's why they added so many pages to it, they added on there. But the original one, he just took the meat and potatoes out of it and put it in this original document, which should have been worked on from there, is what I believe. And the big major difference is this new one requires you get a survey, a legal survey on every piece of property. And that's just about the biggest difference in, to be made that you could add into this one. And this original document said, you had exempt subdivision where you could give up to 2 pieces of ground to your kids, or your relatives, or your brother, or your sister, or whatever. And where that got misconstrued is they had 3 different sections in it. And the last section says, you can only break a piece of ground that's on the books before May 1st of 2011, twice. Next picture can say, well, I give it to him, and he gives half up to his kid, and he gives another 2 acres to his kid, and he keeps breaking on forever. They had a restriction on what is considered reasonable to give your kids that you're not selling to the public. And after that, you had to go in and buy the rest of the rules that's in here, everything else was in there, and they actually had the 1 acre and 2 acre and all that other good stuff, but it needs to be modified because you changed it to 1 acre now. I'm saying it needs to be looked at, it needs to be worked through, but you need to decide with the public whether you require a survey for every single break of ground or not. I can't weigh in on that other than that's what the commission has to decide. But I think they should have took this original document, 11 pages, and added on the 3 or 4 pages they needed felt necessary to do what they wanted to get done with this situation. That's from me, thank you.
I'll do that. We're going from 35 back to 13.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that.
I do believe we need to meet the state standards.
Yes.
So if that, I think we need to investigate that further. And Max, maybe if you could, I would like to see some of your document, maybe that you have, that you can show me where to find it. I do think we need to meet that requirement, so we're not completed with this, but I do think that we have realized that 35 pages and I do believe that was not malicious intent. I think that was a mistake that could have been brought to our attention and we could have fixed that.
For the meeting, yeah, the rest of the stuff.
We have to fix that tonight.
I think Lisa was very diligent at trying to put in every single thing, because we were making changes, last month, very fast and furious. And the reason that I called it a public hearing is because you might remember in January 25, we had this big uproar where the commissioners had been given a document called the new comprehensive plan by the planning commission. And that's very similar to what we're doing tonight, where, we discuss something in the planning commission, and then we recommend at a public hearing, when you come and talk, we recommend it goes on to the commissioners, and once the commissioners have their hearing, it becomes law. And you all might remember that happened last year, and there were 17 home-based businesses that would have been restricted. I would have been allowed my plant nursery, general contractors would have been allowed to have their excavators just sitting out in the agriculture area. You wouldn't have been able to do that without putting up a privacy fence. So there's a public uproar about that last year, and so it's important that the public.
We can say.
Yeah, focus back on is the name here, please.
All right, that's right.
All right, so we made a motion, we have a motion to revert this back to the 13 pages that we had before, with changes.
I'm not being silly, but I don't know, we need to revert back because we currently have the document that we approved at the end of last year on file.
Okay.
So I will still be following to a new document passed. So that document is in existence for already extent, minimal complaints except for the little one that I brought to the board.
Okay.
So I'm sorry for the confusion. I think that the 13-page document is still in effect for 17 or 18. What the current one is still in effect. We didn't remove it. I would like for the changes to be put in. Again, I'm just one member of the body. It is my office is the one that implements these. It would make it easier, it's more streamlined and direct. I can read it, that's what it needs to be, we're good to go. I would like to not come back the next month with 13 pages. That's what we already have. I would like maybe as a recommendation that we add what we brought in from chapter 153. And if we are wanting to keep it, the changes, just next month we see them in the major subdivision for the, what I believe my intent was at last month's meeting. I can't speak for everyone else. I think that would be a good motion on the floor. That the current ordinance is still in effect. No one redacted it. It's still flowing. The two changes for administrative, being administrative, that we could almost be a dead horse over. And everything from 153, if we're in agreement that it probably should just apply to major subdivisions, we put that in the major subdivision category and we review it in June. I made that motion for everything. I just,
You know, I gotta go back about 35 minutes ago or whatever, but there's a motion, it's on the table, go back to the 13-page document Lucy made. And then Lucy invited Daniel Lana to speak, and I think that motion is valid. So I want to clarify that and then ask you to simply restate the motion, please.
Lucy's motion as officially died. Okay, so then I make a motion for next month's meeting, for us to come with a draft prepared that keeps the original document as on file right now with the change of the owning of the driveway verbiage in administrative, with the addition from administrative first paragraph and minor first paragraph that if you need an access easement, you can't meet the requirements of admin, you flow to a minor. And anything that we thought as a board, be chapter 153, added into it. And we'll review that in June.
We review it before the meeting,
Yes,
so that we have time to evaluate this
at a meeting,
at a meeting, not a public hearing, but at a meeting.
I said, sorry. I said.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Opposed?
Lori, you need your vote on this.
He's not here.
Okay, you seconded the motion.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm sorry.
Well,
There you go.
all right, thank you. All right, so we got a motion and a second. We have all voted in favor, opposed, did I ask for that? Opposed? Motion carried. Now, anything more on subdivision control? Any other? Yeah. Right. We would know them again, but. There we go, thank you. We're done with that. Discussion draft amendments, we're done with that. Continuation of solar discussion. Was there I think we'll move on to that. So, and three. Oh, okay. All right, line Gray. Hold it off. You want to hold it up too? All right. Thank you all. This is to be continued. The solar, continuation of solar discussion. And the agenda says refer to the Harrison County Solar Ordinance. And, I'd like for, Owen, if you would, could you come on down and talk about this, what you got for a little bit? Then we'll start in on this.
Would you like me to just start with like my statement?
Yeah, just go ahead.
So after reviewing the ordinance, there's quite a bit in it that is workable. It's fine with us. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, thank you. All right, I'll give Owen stuff too. Yeah, the rate of power, talking about the Harrison County ordinance. And we're not sure exactly what y'all are gonna take out of that ordinance. It's a process. So I'm just gonna comment on that. But it's a clear zone of solar. There's no place in Washington County that exists that satisfies all the requirements there. And really, the items that zone out solar here, are these. It's only allowed in industrial ground. It's, has to be resumed to industrial, for solar to fly there. And that's an issue in itself, but, it's very restrictive. On top of that, there's a solar only on soil production that's, I think, less than 0.9. Obviously, don't go out of them, that's not property, and not to mention the infringements on, landowners' property rights.
Do you have the page references that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, if it's not too much trouble.
Yep. So the soil production factor, an issue is on page 12.
Sorry.
The industrial ground is right at the beginning of the ordinance, on page 6. There are also, the next item I was going to talk about is acreage restriction. No product can be above 200 acres. No total area of the county can be above 2,000. Clear restriction of landowner rights that also is thrown out of our projects. You'll find that on page 22. There's also something we can't understand really there about only building solar on a slope greater than 6%. That is impossible for us. We build on slope less than 5% unless it's facing north, or whatever direction is best for the sun. You don't need to get into that, but it's an obvious no. And then well testing is obviously important here, but it requires us to test wells within 3.5 miles of the project. So it's an incredible undue burden on us. It's very hard to prove if any well were to have issues that it would be our fault within 3.5 miles. But we're more than amenable to well testing before and after construction for project or residents that are adjacent to the project. It's a good ordinance and a good ordinance aspect, and we can provide examples from many other counties. One that we're in Howard County as a great example of well testing. I'm just going to stop there and call this ordinance what it is. It's a zone out of solar in this county. It can exist if this were enacted as is. There's other items in there that we discussed that are a good start. might be restricted on this, but are undoable. But those are the other things that really are undoable. And I'm happy to answer questions on any other things. There's some good studies that are going in the right direction here. Some we've never heard of, but they're the right idea. We feel that this ordinance, though, never intended for those studies to happen. Telecommunications is an example. We've never asked for something like that. We've never heard of it. There's things you have to do to prove that we aren't interfering with the FAA and all that. But, that study wasn't fleshed out in this ordinance because no one's going to be able to build a solar project in Harrison County. We're happy to do those things if they're defined more clearly. And there's other examples that we talk about, but as it stands right now, they're not fleshed out because whoever wrote this, who was paid a good amount of money to write this, did not accept it. And so I'll end there. It clearly was written by someone in Harrison County that probably was paid a good amount of money to figure out the best way to really infringe on landowners' rights out here, which I know is a big issue for people here, and really allow for governmental creation a huge amount of red tape associated with any type of large solar project. So if you're limiting, this ordinance would be limiting landowners' rights to participate in a solar project. I know that's the issue.
Your knowledge, are there any solar projects in Harrison County?
Well, this isn't passed. This is draft ordinance. So I think there are some. I'm not positive. We don't have.
How long are your all leases generally?
I do want to point that I've answered this question like many times at this meeting, but it is 40 years max.
40 years max.
Yeah, we have 20 years for 40 years maximum production. Usually it's 7 to 9 years to build.
Is that, well, that's your max, but is that in your leases? Is that
No, it's equal to 5 to 30.
Oh,
I know you came and you discussed this with us on many occasions too. I appreciate you coming back and doing that as well. And my reason for referring to the Harrison County solar ordinance was that there's a lot of similarities between Harrison County as far as topography is concerned and all of that. And my goal here, but it seems like we keep getting derailed, was to take this through and use what we feel like could be best for Worthington County. So, we can probably stay for another hour or two. Do you want to go through it? I'd rather not, but tonight, but I would like for us to do that. So any other comments from?
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to Owen, because Ranger has a project about 2,000 acres, kind of close to my side of the county. I think you're calling it Dog Trot Solar because it's over in Dog Trot. Owen has been the only one that showed up and one of his coworkers to actually answer our questions. There's another project that's 8,000 acres, and I'm not sure exactly where it is. I know it's like on the other side of the county, maybe speaking or something. That company has never bothered to show. So I feel like we can trust Owen, based on the fact that he's always been transparent. He sat down with me outside of here, and there hasn't been a question that I've asked that he's ever tried to evade or not say. And I appreciate the fact that, you're trying to balance the property rights. With regards to the similar topography, the thing that I've always been concerned with is singles. I've got one through my yard. If you look at Hardinsburg General Store, Ace in Hardinsburg, there's a big area. I think they got a sinkhole there. It's all fenced off. And so that was the thing that owners tried to relay my concerns on is, how can they construct this without causing collapse, either on that property or nearby? And the other thing that Owen has done by being transparent is many of you may not realize that we've always tried to have local control of the things that happen near where our bodies live and where our grandchildren and children are. And the state of Indiana recently tried to end around all of your property rights and say at the state level, they would just rip away our right to say no or yes. And so just thank you for showing up again.
Well, I appreciate the thanks too, but I think part of this meeting too was that we've been 20 to 25 landowners that are in this project, and all of them make decisions in their life based on what this project will be doing. They need to buy equipment, they need to figure out what land they can buy and sell, and that is based off of our project moving forward or not. And we need a decision from the county. It's been a year now, and I understand that this moratorium is 2 years. We've been clear that that does not work for us and our landowners. But we're getting to a point where we need a decision from the county. And because we're going to stay waiting around for, I mean, a metaphorical forever, until we get one. And our landowners are not happy about it. And we have no control over the timing.
I can hear the frustration in your voice, and I know that tens of millions of dollars is at stake here because the solar companies have to basically buy, I'm going to say it's credits, I know that's not the right word, but they have to let the utility commission know what their intentions are, and then they have to buy into that even before a single, shovel full of dirt is overturned. But, when we're balancing property rights, we're balancing the property rights of 25 people who are signing into something that is going to be 40 years long. And all of those things, to be fair, Owen, all of those things that they're doing for the next 5, 10, 20, 40 years, we're talking about stuff that I'm going to be dead for. This is my grandkids, your grandkids, our great grandkids. And the thing that I've always been hesitant about are the PFAS, the chemicals, the cadmium,
We've talked about this before. We don't use PFAS, and we're more than happy to hold ourselves to that standard in our sense. It's very workable. And again, these things have been repeated. We haven't seen movement. And I understand the want for property rights, but they're not seeing it right now. And the idea that these people can't make decisions that's longer than 40 years is a little preposterous. It's their decision to make.
well, it's their decision to make until it hurts their neighbor. My rights stop where your nose begins, and so if I were to put solar on my property and there was any kind of runoff, anything that, and you can hear the stories one way or the other, you're going to just claim them. Somebody else is going to claim that that there are chemicals that run off of those solar panels. The other thing, you mentioned human studies, and I'm curious, have they ever done a human study on the I'm going to call it subsonic frequency, and I know that's probably not the physical term.
I didn't mention human study. I don't really know what that is.
Well, people that live near, it's like when you're at a stoplight.
It would be nice if the rest of us could, and I would like to share my frustration, that we're not moving forward. And it's because we can't, as a planning commission, discuss the things that need to be discussed. I feel railroaded every meeting that we can't have a conversation, we can't discuss this because all of our time is used up. With, like you said, answering the same questions, going through the exact same things every single time. And so, I'm frustrated too. And I'm frustrated for our property owners. So, I understand. So if we could concentrate on this document, that is what is on our agenda, as discussing the Harrison County solar ordinance, I would really.
Could I make a suggestion? We put Owen first, you put solar first next time, so he doesn't get run out at the end.
I think he would prefer us to discuss things than to question him over and over again. Honestly.
There's a dialogue. Go ahead.
Well, I agree. I think that we need time to discuss, and there are a lot of distractions that have taken us away from topics. So I would like us to be able to focus, just like tonight. I think this was very productive and is what we needed to do, but I also think that it could have been much shorter. There was a misunderstanding needed to be clarified. So it was nice to be more productive.
Okay, just real quick, there are 10 different preliminary studies. You mentioned that telecommunications, you thought that wasn't needed. What about the other?
Not that it wasn't needed, we just don't know what it is.
Okay.
It's not explained very clearly. It's just how it will affect things. And that's something that we'd like to dig in on. But our preference is that we don't study that we never heard of. Another one is like the noise study, talking about, subsonic, infrasonic, things. It's a type noise study. Oh, yes. Page 10. Noise evaluation report. It's just, these are things that we haven't asked before. and we don't see them clearly defined here. It's just an urban for it. We normally do a sound study that describes what the project will sound like to the human ear when, at different points. And that's something we're more than happy to show at this county if we show it at most of it.
Could you briefly describe what that someone might be to me?
Yeah, you won't be able to hear it from a residence. It's the inverters. Again, we talked about this, but I'm happy to repeat that they're placed set back from the road, at least 700 feet from a residence. There might be areas that if you walk back into the woods or something, you can hear what it might sound like the buzz of a refrigerator or something like that. If you get close to them and stand right next to them, they'll sound like a fan whirring. But that's about it. Places that don't have things around them. But that can be demonstrated through a sound study that it won't impact you won't be able to hear.
So the homeowner, you could show me what it's going to sound like.
Yeah, we can model it.
Can you repeat what that setback was this summer
Our standard is 700 feet from a residence,
from the resident
but that's what the inverter.
of the inverter?
Yeah, it's an inverter transformer block. So it has fans in them that all can cool them down. The sound is great. I'm happy to hear it with y'all.
I think you mentioned 5 things, and I think I only 4, probably this one. but
Oh, the zone out. Yeah. I can give them,
high level, yeah.
yeah, industrial ground, has to be zoned industrial. No solar on production factor greater than 0.9. Acreage restrictions of 200 per project, 2,000 total gate in the county. Well testing as it's written, it's not an issue for us, but we can have a 3.5 mile radius, and requiring us to build on slope greater than 6%.
And that you said that this states, I saw that this states greater than 6%. You said that you would at 5%?
No.
No, you wouldn't.
We build on flat ground because that is what allows us our projects to capture the sun and traffic. So we can build up to 5%, sometimes between 5 and 10, depending on where the panels are fixed.
They're also easier to build on those less than 5%.
Actually, yeah. You can't agree to be able to tilt the panels and they can't do it on a hill because you have traffic.
I'll make this, for those in the audience, and I've said this for several days, for several times, our region, Kentucky, go look at those down there. They're built on hills. They're supposed to have animals run under them and they can't and all that. So, I mean, I personally, we ought to take this document and take it apart. Well, it's going to be quick enough that you can all see what we go through, to try to come up with something. It's probably going to be a while, I'm afraid to say.
And I understand that, but the point remains the same is that there are people that are banking on a decision being made here, and the longer it takes, the less able the less ability they have to give themselves the time to make that decision. I do also want to say, Urban Kentucky is brought up a lot. I went down and saw it. It's not a good looking project, changing fence to those houses. My company, Ranger Power, also has projects up in between Covington and Petersburg. You can see it right off the 74. It looks much better than Irvington, Kentucky, but it's an example of what solar trucks can look like. So I know it's a little bit more of a drive, but
Thank you for that.
That's between Covington and one.
Petersburg, right off the 74. You can see it on the highways.
Yeah, I'd love to drive on.
Land over there, Abbey Road's never looked at it.
Anything else for everyone?
No, I think there's some things that we are happy to discuss here. They're more, like I said, amenable, and I think it requires for lack of a better word, a negotiation. Ultimately, it's y'all's decision, but I think we would love to have some input as representatives as far as I know. What year is zoned up though, what we can't do.
Well, I guess I'll start off where I kind of wish Owen had come up first, because this is what I was gonna ask the planning commission, if you've read this, tell me where the solar can happen in Washington County if we follow all these.
I think he's right, I think it was his own.
That,
Just being fair.
and so is that the point? And I don't think that that is our point. And if anybody read, I sat down, I'm a last minute person, okay? Anybody last night, sitting down, reading this, reading it to my husband, and we were going through every property that we could think of. And I can't think of one where we could have solar development. And that's a tough thing for me to be considering this. And I'm struggling with this thought.
Since you have pending projects, and if we don't really need to answer this right now, but I'm just gonna throw this idea. Could we possibly approve those and continue to work on this? Thanks, just food for thought.
We're willing to hold ourselves to plenty restrictions. Y'all can write it in an ordinance or some sort of agreement that we have to, whatever rules can be put in place, however, we're amenable to them. This is how we usually see it done.
When people find out I'm on the planning commission, they always ask me, why isn't solar just on rooftops? Like, everybody's like, why don't you just put it over the wall in the parking lot? You know, why do we have to use that good farm ground? And I know that's the soil thing here. This soil number is about the nutrient density and ability to farm that soil. So people don't want their good farmland taken up.
They're not being taken. They make an agreement with us with panels on the ground that they own. They're converting it themselves temporarily.
So the owner is in agreement with your company to put panels on their property,
Exactly.
the soil that they.
Exactly.
And if somebody, one of those JC, Walmart, wherever, wanted to put solar panels on their property, that would be appropriate.
Yeah, but I tell people,
I don't think that's what, I don't think we're in disagreement, that that's not what he's asking.
It's a landowner first.
and what I told people is what Owen educated me about, which is it's great to put them all there for that site. But Owen, correct me if I'm wrong, you're providing like so much power and it's gonna go to transmission lines, and then you're selling it to places far away. And so you've got to be as close to as you can.
Mine was done earlier on.
Regionally, the lines go where they go with the region. You know, I explained this multiple. Increases regional capacity. I don't think though that needs to be something that's important. Or just not.
The planning commission is to ensure that we give property owners their rights, and also the neighbors of the property owners, they're protected. And that what you're installing is safe for our community, for kids to learn. And I can go through the three major things that we need to solve.
And we'll say that the decommissioning requirements here are workable. The 150% bond is a little absurd to us because the county's already hiring their own person to make that estimate. Again, that's something that can be negotiated later. All the other requirements there are great. The instruction, requirements, great. We'll follow them. That's to protect property owners. And that's more the reason.
Well, the question I always had was, your company is going to make billions and billions of dollars off of this. I mean, we hope that you're going to be really profitable, right? So you can stay in business and be able to decommission later and have that money there. But what's in it for the people other than 25 landowners? And I'm saying this for the benefit, I mean, you and I had these discussions before.
Why does a personal choice of the landowner have to benefit the rest of the county?
Yeah, and it's a very fair point for you to come back with that because I'm actually anti-communist and pro-individual liberty. But you're coming in and you're taking up farmland, and all of that power is going to go somewhere. And we see with data centers that, everybody ends up in an auction against big companies for this electricity, and you're sending all of this electricity away. So my question was always, why can't we leave 5% or 10% of it here? So that if there's, a problem with electricity availability, at least the people who live where the electricity is being generated get a piece of that. And so sending
And I've talked about this, it's incredibly expensive to connect neighboring homes to the project. It would be a wild requirement of the county And honestly, it's more cheap just to pay for the bills.
So we talked about it before, and I use Kevin as an example. They can raise pumpkins all they want to out in on their property, and there's nobody telling them who they can and cannot sell those pumpkins to. And I'm sure he would be very upset if this board tried to tell him that, yes, you can sell the Kroger, but you can only sell the Kroger within 20 miles of Washington County, when you're probably selling the Kroger in Florida. Like, I struggle very much with that business model or that component.
And that's not even something that's in the Harrison County ordinance, use like one of the IC stuff.
Now, it's under the jurisdiction, I'm sorry, no, it's not under the jurisdiction of what our board does, or what our commission does.
And once, I think you've said this, and if you have, I'm so sorry, you repeat it because I haven't been on. Once it's up in the power, how do you know how much? I mean, like, you can't tell us if y'all are 5% here. You've said that once it's up, once it's soared.
Yeah, if it goes to a substation in Mount Tabor and a substation down, near Louisville. Where it goes from that substation, it's a utilities decision.
But that's utilities.
Yeah, they're not gonna send it to California because they'll lose all the power for it. They might send it to Louisville. That's right.
I think you've said that before, but I just want to clarify. For new people here that we've talked about.
All right. Maybe the Harrison County document for weekend wasn't the right thing to do according to.
I'm not saying
But
I'm saying that this needs a lot of consideration before we start slapping things together and doing that. I had a lot more hope in this document before I started reading it, that it was gonna work for us. And there are some things that I made comments next to that, this doesn't even apply to us. We don't even have an industrial zone. We're not gonna have an industrial zone. I'm not going through all that again. So that doesn't apply. You know, there were things that I was like, this seems outrageous to expect. Like, I could identify, I'm not a solar company, but I could identify the reason this sentence is here is so that solar company doesn't even look at our county as a place. And I'm not sure that's what we intended. I think we're intending that solar be in the right place, meeting the setbacks that we need. Setbacks, what did I say, setback?
No, yeah.
Okay,
Like property lines, road.
Property lines,
Homeowner, homes.
homes, that sort of thing. I like the wildlife corridors, you know, those kinds of things. But we're not ever going to talk about what we like in this or not. If we can. I'll read this and come back together and just look.
I think maybe we should start with how we would ideally like it to be. I think we can agree on probably those two things, what protecting property owner rights, protecting neighboring property owner rights, and ensuring safety. For me, that's the three most important things.
And I think that's everything.
And then yeah, instead of working on a document already established, if we start asking ourselves, how do we make that happen? And that's where we start talking. Then we can start saying, okay, well, setbacks need to be how much? Then we can go to the document and be like, okay, this one has this much, this one has this much. But until we kind of set the vision for what we want, I don't think we can model off of any other county. We need to set our vision for what's important to us. So maybe, I don't know if I can propose this, but next, after we get through the other agenda items, we could just have like a visioning section where we just throw out what is ideally looking at and start working on it. Instead of trying to make somebody else's vision, which likely you're right, this vision is probably to not have solar. So if we're saying solar's gonna happen, we need to make it the best that it can be. Okay. So I would say that we need to think of our ideal situations and do some research and come back to the table with what we would want it to look like for that. And then we can run those other counties as needed.
We'll let it go. Other guys have a lot of great language.
Right. I think if once we get our goals down, then we can copy and paste from wherever.
And not to say that there's some things in this Harrison County book that.
Yeah, there are really good things in the Harrison County book that I like very much. There are lots of yeses and exclamation points that mean I like it. But there's some things that we need to think about.
I'm not going to dispute any of that. Because my reason for this was the simple fact is, it is a document. We can pick it apart, put it together. We can make it our document. There's a lot of good language here. And there's some that's not so good here. So, but it's up to us to do that. That's what 2 meetings ago encourages you to take it home, look at your homework for the next month. We didn't even get to it the next month. We found so many other things here, so trying to get it done. So it's a challenge. We want to do what's best for the county, and I appreciate that. Sometimes we don't always agree, but we need to have discussion, civil discussion. Is what, and I appreciate everyone talking about this tonight. The subdivision control thing, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. As you probably figured out, I'm getting ready to wind this meeting down if I can for tonight. But I encourage us to go back. We got 3 weeks before the next meeting. And look at this and write down what we think we want solar to look like in this county and how it will affect the county. So with that, does anybody else got any comments?
If I may, back, Gershon, how long ago it's been, over a year ago, young lady sitting across from me, Danielle, spent a lot of time going through the Miami County ordinance, which is only 12 pages long. And she did a lot of highlighting. Green means she liked it. Yellow, she had a question. And pink, she didn't like it. So I do have a copy. Let me have a copy. And I would strongly suggest you look at the Miami County ordinance. And you might find that we have a lot more in common with that county, maybe than something like the Harrison County version, because I would agree with someone who made a comment that it's basically a document that's all out solar, and we already have a lot of people in this county who are landowners who have signed these leases, and they're expecting some action, and they would like it yesterday, but we don't want to rush into this, and I just hope we can get something done in the next 60 to 90 days, because I think we're holding some of them up. That's not fair. I think we have a responsibility to everyone. We need to make sure that it's a fair document, addresses all our concerns, health concerns, and move on.
I want to thank God for calling me on.
I guess I've got one more question for you. What prompted Ranger Power to come to Washington County? Why did Ranger Power decide they want to come to Washington County?
Transmission capacity, meaning that there's room on the line that we're connecting to inject power. That power, I don't know what I was going there. That's it. It's there. I mean, there's also flat land next to it, which is another requirement, but there's plenty of flat land in the center. It's really, our area of the Midwest, if you go to where there's flat land next to lines with capacity. That's it.
So did you come to Washington County did you appear commissioners or anyone, or did you just come rent land, lease some land?
I mean, we did meet with you've got 2 years, because the Farm Bureau had. But that's never been a requirement. You lease land without notifying the county. You notify the county once you want to build. Okay. That's the rule of the law. Thank you.
I'm going to adjourn.
Opposed?
It's a slip sheet.
Yeah. No.
It's.
What do you got?
It's a